All right, here we go. Talk a little bit about and let you know who is with us this morning, who's going to join me on the Reading Circle microphone is Melvin J. Gravely. Mel's interest in family and children advocacy started 40 years ago as a mentor, football/basketball coach, and foster parent. Mel Gravely is a native of Canton, Ohio. He earned a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Kent State University and a Master's in Urban Studies and Public Administration from the University of Akron. He is a licensed foster parent with Franklin County Children's Services. Mr. Gravely is also a registered parliamentarian with the National Association of Parliamentarians and a certified parliamentarian trainer with the American Institute of Parliamentarians. He currently is the parliamentary for the National Medical Association. And in addition, Mr. Gravely has received extensive training in mediation, conflict resolution, and train the trainer for cultural diversity, domestic violence, and team building. Mr. Gravely currently provides specialized training for various state and county Head Start agencies, providing board, staff, and policy council training. He has had the privilege of training parents, staff, and board members at several National Head Start Association annual conferences. Mel has held a number of progressively responsible positions in the family/children advocacy field, including former treasurer and most recently president of the National Foster Parent Association, former education coordinator for the Ohio Association of Parliamentarians, president of the Uranus unit in Columbus, Ohio. He is a certified trainer with the Institute of Human Service and Ohio Human Services Training System. Prior to consulting, Mr. Gravely served on the Canton City Council from 1976 to 1985. He continued his public service with the state of Ohio and retired in 2008. Mel is married, father of two, and lives in Columbus, Ohio, which I understand after we talked this morning is actually Cincinnati. Welcome to the Reading Circle.
We really are about to have one of these awkward moments. You did an amazing job. And here's the scary part. You just introduced my dad.
Get out of here.
No joke.
That's not you?
And this is, no, but it is my dad. I guess it's a part of me because it's my father.
Oh, wow. So all right, that's your dad. So, all right, then I got to get your website then.
This is the second time this week that this happened. And so my dad is the most active social media guy. My dad's birthday was yesterday. Matter of fact, I'm going today up to Columbus to celebrate his birthday. But Mark, you just did a wonderful job.
Well, I thank you. So I'll tell you what is yours so I can introduce you then?
you can, the one you can go to is dearwhitefriend.com. dearwhitefriend.com.
All right, we're going to do it.
I got no.
Go ahead.
Man, I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say, if that's the case, we're going to do it again. All right, now, and this is the first time in 20 years that's ever happened to me. I've been on the show. So you're Gravely too. That's all right. It's all good. It's going to be fun. So I tell you what, this is the first time in 20 years that's ever happened that I've actually misintroduced in terms of, because it's the same. I'll say, all right, here we go. So now we're going to get the correct one that's on the line with me. Author, Melvin Gravely II. And I told Mel we were going to have some fun this morning. It's already started out as fun. Mel Gravely is the majority owner. So now you're going to know son and dad. That's all right. You're going to know the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. You get all three. All right, here we go.
And there's a third, too. So
see, there you go. Mel Gravely is the majority owner and CEO of a commercial construction company in Cincinnati, Ohio. As one of the largest construction companies in the region, it is a consistent member of the Deloitte 100 list of largest privately owned companies. An active business and civic leader who has chaired the board of the Cincinnati Regional Chamber of Commerce, Gravely served on the board of the United Way, was a founding board member of the Cincinnati Regional Economic Development Initiative, and vice chairperson of Artswave, the largest community arts fund in the nation. He co-chaired the Cincinnati Regional Business Committee, a group of 100 middle market CEOs working collectively toward meaningful civic action. production. He is also a board member of several private companies. Gravely earned a BS in computer science from Mount Union University, an MBA from Kent State University, and a Ph.D. All right, Dr. Gravely, from the Union Institute and University. He has written 8 business books, and he's the father of 3 adult children and married to Chandra, Webb Gravely, and they have 1 granddaughter. Well, let's try that again. Welcome to the Reading Circle microphones, Melvin Gravely II.
You know what? I've never seen a guy so smooth, man. You did that pivot perfectly.
Well,
Can I go back to the conversation with Satan and God?
Yes, please.
You said just like you and I were just talking. I just want to know which one of us is playing Satan and which one of us is playing God.
You know what? I ain't gonna identify. So it's like I'll leave that up to the listener. Though we'll both be God in this particular instance. But
all right, very good.
In any event, you know what? And while it may have been a blooper or a faux pas or whatever you want to call it, but at the same time, it also sends a message. And I'll tell you what that message is. I just read about your father and how active he was, but apparently and clearly it was passed down to the son as well. Yeah, that's a beautiful thing.
My dad pushed me on to a nonprofit community board when I was 18 years old, and it's a bug that has stuck with me. I believe that's my way of influencing policy and action in the community, and so there is no doubt my father was intentional about driving that down, and my wife and I are doing the same with our kids, who are all very active as well. So you are right. The apple doesn't fall very far from the tree, and I am super proud of my dad.
Well, now, a lot of times when we say apple don't fall from the tree, a lot of times that's meant negatively. But in your case, it's positive. And again, since we're both African-American males, and a lot of my shows, the focus is about our ethnicity and African-American, because, we are so downtrodden and folks try to beat us down all the time. I try to show us in the real light, in the positive light. But in terms of African-Americans, that is a beautiful thing, because if you go back to our history in Africa, that's exactly what happened. It went from the elders down to the children and children's children, so forth and so on. So the fact that your father had that wherewithal to pass that along to you, and you had the spirit and the receptivity to take it on, that says a lot. Oh, I was on vacation.
I would agree with you.
I was on vacation a couple of weeks ago, and I stayed with my aunt who lives in North Carolina. My grandmother passed that house that she's in down to her. And I was sharing with her, that doesn't happen a lot in the African-American community. It's, for the most part, always happened in the Caucasian community. But in the African-American, that's why, the Caucasian community had that big head start compared with us who did not have property and land to leave. So I said, the fact that you're in this house that your mother left to you, that is a testament, because it doesn't happen that often in the African-American community. So I'm saying the same thing with you. The fact that your father was that and now you're that too, that's to be applauded. God bless. Yeah.
Oh, I would agree with you, man. And my parents, I write in the book, I dedicated this book to them because what I realized when I was writing this book was exactly what you just said, that I had been given my version of privilege because of who my parents were and what they pushed, expected, enabled me to do and to be. And it took this book and me reflecting on my experiences over the last 45 years to really understand the influence. I always loved my parents, but I didn't realize the influence that my parents have had on who I am today. And, I'm a 57-year-old. I'll be 57 here in 2 weeks. And it was just a really moving opportunity for me to appreciate that.
Now, you said in a couple of weeks. What date?
August 26th.
Okay, we're right around the corner. I'm August 17th. So on August,
all right.
August 17th, I'll be 59. I'm a couple of years older than you, but we're in that same ballpark.
Well, you're a handsome man, though. I've seen your pictures, so you look good.
Well, thank you. Same back at you. I'm sitting here now that I'm on the right site. I'm sitting here looking at the black and white picture on the about area on your on your side as well. So there's always a first for everything. So that was my first, being able to do that, but it still works.
You just introduced the first generation and then the next one.
There you go. That's it. That's a good way to position it.
Gotten to me yet. You hadn't gotten to me yet.
That's absolutely right. So you kind of answered kind of like the first question I usually ask in terms of kind of like where did this all begin? We kind of answered that with that faux pas. And so we'll kind of move on in terms of, because the book, give the name, because the book is actually pretty much what the website is, Dear White Friend. Am I correct?
Yeah, Dear White Friend, the realities of race, the power of relationships, and our path to equity is the name of the book.
All right, so it kind of flows with what I was just saying a couple of minutes ago in terms of historically how our Caucasian brothers and sisters, and I always position it that way. I always loved the way Martin Luther King Jr. used to call them our Caucasian brothers and sisters, and I picked that up as well. Yeah. Our Caucasian brothers and sisters were able to get ahead historically based on how everything was taken, the atrocities, the thievery, the everything else. And they were able to pass that down to their children. And it just continued on. Wherein we as African Americans did not have that opportunity because we were the ones things were stolen from. So even if we had something, as in the case that we just had down in Tulsa, we were celebrating that. Even when we did have, they came in and destroyed. Okay. So the fact that now you have written a book concerning because race relations are still here. This is 2021. We've had an African-American president. We've had all kinds of stuff. And yet we are back to square one for the most part with race relations. So your book is time. And the fact that you said, Dear White Friend, because I just told you, for me, I love the way Reverend King would always say our Caucasian brothers and sisters. All right. And that's the same way I address it. And then your book is called Dear White Friend. So let's talk a little bit about, is this your first book or have you written books before? Or
no, I've written other books. I've never written a book on race. I'm a business guy, MBA. My research interest is African Americans in business, and it's not so I've never really gone out and addressed the issue of race. But I kept listening and I kept wondering where was the business voice that is collegial, that is friend based, that is relationship based, that is trying to help my white friends come to realize what's really going on, because they are responding to the sound bites, they're responding to their echo chamber, they're responding to the things that threaten them both emotionally and financially and from power. They're reacting to that. And quite honestly, if you really are honest with yourself, so would we. So would we if we felt like, that we were being threatened, if we felt like we were being accused. People want them to become enlightened, and it's got to be difficult. So I'm not defending white people in their position in any way, not in any way. The book does not let them off the hook. But I wanted to cool the conversation down, not water it down, but cool it down and have a conversation just like I would be talking to you or any of my other friends and say, hey, here's what's on my heart. Let me show you some history, some facts, some data, speaking from my own experiences as well. So I made it very personal so they could connect with it in that way. And then let's talk about what our relationship has been. And then let's talk, what can we do together? So the book is really in kind of 3 sections. A little bit about, not a little bit, a considerable amount of research about the history you just talked about. And we can talk about the implications of that history. And then, what relationally have we been doing? And then it's all about solutions. So it's broken out into those 3 categories.
So now, how did you find it? What challenges did you face writing a book like this versus, the business books or what you normally would write?
Yeah, I say that it was inspired by what I had experienced from. I had some racial equity training a couple of years ago, and it just messed my head up when I saw the patterns, and I kept seeing them repeat. So it was inspired by that, but it was enabled by COVID. Because I didn't have evening things I had to do and weekend things. So my wife and I were just here. We're empty nesters, and I had more time. And so the letters turned into more letters, and because every chapter is a letter. And so I wrote a letter, and then I wrote a letter, and I showed some friends, and they'd give me feedback, and another letter. So the challenge I faced an emotional challenge because it was very hard to dig into this information and go back and reflect on personal stories. But I also ran into a challenge of tone. How am I direct and candid, but also write in a tone that my white friend can still read, comprehend, and move forward from? And that was my constant challenge. I don't want to water it down, but I don't want to send them running. I don't want to hide or sugarcoat the facts, but I don't want to get folks to stop reading. And so that was the balance, to be honest with you, Mark, in writing this book that I have not had to worry about before.
Well, this is the thing. I'm going back to Rodney King back in the 90s. I've never understood why we just couldn't get along. But at the same time, I understand the dynamics, like you were just saying, in terms of the power base. Like those in power, of course, they're not going to lose their power. And as the demographics are shifting, for the most part, the country and the world, for that matter, is becoming less and less white, less and less Caucasian. So I can understand the feeling of being threatened. But at the same time, while you may be feeling threatened, you need to understand the actions, 2, 3, 4, 5, 600 years ago of your folks really was ill-gotten gain. And the ill-gotten...
Mark, you use an interesting word, though. You said they need to understand. And the truth is, they really don't.
Right.
They're good.
No, I know, because see, when you get into this whole, like you used the term earlier about your privilege, when you affront or confront our Caucasian brothers and sisters with privilege, they look at you like, I don't know what you're talking about. Like, no, exactly. You need to understand that, but just because you walked in the door with your white skin opened the door for you that my black skin closes.
Yep, absolutely. And so how do we have a conversation with them that helps them come to realize? Because us telling them that has not worked.
Correct.
So I tried to have a conversation with them through these letters that helped them come to realize what you just said, and help them come to realize that although they say they didn't create this mess, the fact that there are benefiting bystanders, is what I call them in the book. Benefiting bystanders are just as bad as the people who started it in the first place, because now you know better. So I expect you to do better. And that's the challenge, because we've been telling them that they've got white privilege. We've been telling them
correct
that but they have not come to realize it on themselves. Therefore, they haven't acknowledged it, and they haven't decided that it has to change. That is what I was trying to get them to do. Walk them through so they can see themselves. It's like anything else we're trying to move people to. You got to get it for yourself. And so how can we write? How could I write to them in a way to help them get there? And quite honestly, the book just came out Tuesday, so I don't know how it's going yet. We'll find out. I'll let you know.
So that's great, because the timing was great in terms of you being here on the show with the book just being released, and congratulations.
Yes.
So
thank you.
Absolutely, because see, again, I'm going back to, at least for me, I know everybody doesn't look at it that way, but for me, I could care less about color. I could care less about preference. I could care less about any of that, because to me, I still look at the human being. Now, I know that sounds trite. Yeah. I know that sounds, cliche, but the truth of the matter is, I do. And I'm not saying, because my thing is this, I'm kind of going back to Jesse Jackson about his grandmother or aunt's quilt or whoever it was. Each part of us brings something to the equation that's valuable. What we tend to do is always focus on the negative instead of focusing on the positives we all bring. So you know what? I may cook something a little bit different from you. It has a different taste, but you know what? Now when I try yours and you try mine, we've both learned something new about our food. So I mean, we don't value what each difference brings to the table. We focus on the difference as a negative versus focusing on the difference as a positive. And that's where folks get caught up in terms of white is better than black is better than white, red is better than no.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And whether it's food or music or opinions, you're right. I mean, us coming together, if we can share those things at a temperature that allows me to really taste your food, you know what I mean? And
exactly.
Really say, but if I don't really, I'm just using that analogy of food or music or whatever, or your opinion, if I don't really ponder what you're saying, reflect on it, how it impacts me, and then give you mine in a manner that allows you and I, Mark, to be in relationship,
right,
we're going to have a difficult time. We really are.
No, because that's when the defenses go up And that's whenever the resistance and the blocking of the messages go up, because it really is going to take folks being receptive to each other's side or each other's message. That is really what's going to take. And that cannot be done with resistance and defense.
Well, no, there's no doubt about it. And it's almost like, our human minds can't hold two things to be true at the same time. It can be true that we live in America, which provides great opportunity and has been an amazing story of a nation. That is true. And it is also true we have a deep, dark history around race that has created a construct where whites are on the top, blacks on the bottom, and everybody else is in between. Those two things can both be true at the same time. And if we can get to that, because white people don't want to give up the fact they live in the greatest nation, that they earned what they got, but they don't want to give that up.
Right.
And I'm not suggesting that they haven't earned what they got. And that, we can talk about privilege, but people have worked hard. They've made good decisions. They've invested well. They've been lucky. They've been timely. And blacks have been also, enslaved and segregated. And so these two things can be true at the same time. And if we can acknowledge them both, then we can really begin to reconcile what it means for us to be here together at this moment. And that's the challenge of Dear White Friend. That's what I'm really, trying to do there.
Well, I applaud you because, again, until folks begin talking and communicating and conversating, it's just not going to happen. Now, I'm very clear, and I've said this on the air before, when the past president came out that would make America great again, that was dog whistle for make America white again. I'm very clear on that. Let us go back to the day whenever, as you were just saying, where the blacks were on the bottom, the whites were on the top, the blacks were the slaves, the blacks were the servants, and this, that, and the other. That's what that was all about, and nobody's going to make me believe any different, especially the way things have panned out. But then you have a generation of kids that's come through that doesn't buy into that. And I'll tell you why, because back in the 90s, I actually taught a diversity class. I was working for AT&T at the time, and I took on an adjunct assignment of going around the country teaching diversity. And because at that time, this is going back to the 90s. That's what I'm saying. We just keep going in the same loop. AT&T had mandated that every employee within the company was going to be diversity trained. And I was one of the diversity trainers, traveled the country. And in many instances, a lot of the students that were in the workshop and in the class would come up to me and say, Mark, my dad was my household was just like All in the Family. That my dad was Archie Bunker, so forth and so on. Now, and a lot of the younger folks did not subscribe to that. They didn't, they were like, nope, that's, for me, that's not right, so forth and so on. So it's going to take each new set of generation to say, you know what, this is foolishness. This is nonsense. And conversations like what you're talking about has to occur.
Yeah. Well, but the cycle continues. We can take the idea of critical race theory and watch the rejection of it and watch laws be passed with the intent of not allowing us to learn about both histories.
Correct.
And their response to it. And so that cycle is still, because they're trying to make sure, don't infect my young people with this thinking around race. And so now my new question, when people say, I don't believe in critical race theory, I always ask, what is critical race theory? And I've not gotten anyone to have a cogent answer to that question, because what they're responding to is the branding.
Right.
That whatever entity, whatever political persuasion, whatever racial persuasion is feeding them. Because none of my friends, when you break it down and say, well, let me just get this clear, you don't want to study the implications of slavery and Jim Crow and segregation, and you don't want to study that. Well, no, I don't mean that. Well, that is critical race theory. It's saying that there's more to our history. They say, well, that's what they mean. Yes. And so again, I'm inviting people in this book to at least ask more questions. When you hear something, I want you to ask, why are they doing it? Why are they doing it now? Who stands to gain? Who stands to lose? Ask more critical questions. Dig into what's the definition of defund the police instead of reacting to it. What are the critical thinkers speaking of about that? And if we can do that, the mongers who are trying to get all on both sides, by the way, of the political battle, because I think there's some folks on the left who are really benefiting from us being divided.
I agree.
Let's find out our truth. in that, and then we can have a real conversation.
I agree, and it's interesting what you were talking about, because back in the February time frame, February, March, or probably January time, I started seeing these things about, I believe it was Utah, Florida, and a couple other states, were allowing parents to opt their kids out of Black History Month, of learning Black history, of learning anything about African American history, whatever. They had to, and I'm an educator, I'm a principal, I work with kids every day. And my first reaction was, well, when do we ever get to opt out of white history?
That would mean we just opt out of history.
Correct. When do we get to opt out? And I'm trying to think of the author. I got to think, because is it Jawanza? I think it's Jawanza, and I got to look up his name. But in his book, he talks about our Caucasian brothers and sisters are surrounded by their greatness no matter where they go. They are affirmed at everything they look at because it's associated with Caucasians. Compared with we now as African Americans have to start doing the same thing in terms of statues and pictures and everything else that we do. We have to make sure that we surround ourselves with African American or people of color affirmation, because our white brothers and sisters, no matter where they turn, are surrounded by something that affirms their greatness. So that's why I go back to, well, now you're going to turn around and say, well, you can opt out of Black history. And that's why the question came to me, well, when did I ever get a chance to opt out of white history? I don't, because it's all around me.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. That's powerful. You know, these are the kind of things in conversation, in relationship that we can have. And I can see a white person's kind of light bulb going off like, ooh, hey, you know what? Mark's got a point there, you know, and that's what I'm trying to get to, man, because if we can change people's, challenge their thinking enough to get to their heart, we can move this thing along in a different way. And you mentioned that we need all the cooks in the kitchen in the various ways. And I, you know, so I'm getting beaten up a little bit by the pre-readers of this book who are Black, saying I wasn't hard enough. Like, you know, one of the first things I say, it's actually on the cover of the book. I say something about, my friend, I do not believe you. I don't think you're a racist. And all my Black friends are like, well, of course you're racist. And I said, well, if I want to be in relationship with someone, would I start out the conversation by saying, hey, man, you're a racist. Let's talk about your racistness, right? And so it's, first of all, I don't believe it to be true. Secondly, I didn't find it to be practical as an approach to letters that get people to move along. But that's my voice. We also need protests in the street. We need firmer voices. A lot of the material I reference here are great scholars on this topic who are just scorching white people. And I say we need those voices too, because if we can keep getting at it in all these ways and quit judging how people are coming, as long as they're authentic, honest, and truthful, then it's a voice we should have at the table. And so I just, you know, I'm honored to just have my little corner of the world with this book and sit on the shoulders of all the great scholars and writers on this topic over the last at least 15 years.
Well, this is the thing. First thing, one of the things people need to understand is there's a difference in definitions of racist and prejudice. There's a difference between racism and prejudice. Now, every last person on the planet is prejudice. Prejudice is just what you like versus you don't like. I like butter pecan ice cream versus chocolate ice cream. I like chocolate ice cream versus, strawberry ice cream. That's a prejudice. All right. Yeah. When we start getting into racist and racism, that's whenever you can impact somebody else's livelihood or their life. So when folks say, well, no, Black people can't be racist. Yes, they can. I'm in a position that if I were racist, I could impact the livelihood of my Caucasian employees that work with me. In other words, I'm a principal and I have if I have a white teacher, I can impact, if I were racist, I could impact her livelihood because my decisions would be based on the fact, well, you know what? I'm going to treat her worse because she's white versus the other teacher who's Black. Now, that's where the racism thing comes in, because, yes, Black people can be racist. I've heard that argument as well, because when racism, as I said, is the impacting of somebody's life or their livelihood, and anybody can be that if they're in position to do it. And see, that's where historically our Caucasian brothers, sisters has impacted the lives of black people. That's where the racism come in. But you could have a white person that's prejudiced. You have black people as prejudiced. That's what I like versus what I don't like.
Yeah.
But people do not, they use those things interchangeably because, see, I hang on words. And I was talking about that earlier in the 6 o'clock hour. I have a grand nephew. He's not my great nephew. He's my grandnephew because that's my sister's child and she is his granddaughter. You know, he is her grandson. So if me and my sister are at the same level, that means he's my grandnephew, not my great nephew. So I hang on words, and I'm saying all that to say folks use prejudice and racist interchangeably. And they're two different things.
They are. And I'm convinced that I've not met many people that wake up in the morning with the intentionality of harming another race. I don't know many people. I don't think I know any white people that I believe. Now, maybe they're fooling me, that they wake up and they say, man, I'm going to find me a black person and I'm going to do them harm. Or that employee, I don't think they're intentional about it. I think they are not intentional not to impact. I don't think they're intentional not to look at the systems that perpetuate the situation we've got. And so my argument is, even if we took all the races, the people who wake up in the morning to do harm to other races, we put them on a rocket ship, we shot them to the moon, we would still have racism, which is, to me, the operating system of the United States of America.
Correct.
Structure that puts whites on top, blacks on the bottom, and everybody else in between. We still have that operating. So all these bad people, we got rid of them. We think, hey, we're all good now. Not true, because my friends, my white friends, still need to understand we've got this system, as you say, that has disadvantaged one group to the advantage of another, and that gap that it's created is perpetuating itself through our schools, our housing, our health care. And if we're not intentional, we've got to. We'll continue to see that gap widen, Mark. And and I know I'm going on, but
I need you to go on. In radio, I need you to go on. That's what I need you to do. Well, what we don't want in radio is dead air. So go on.
We don't want dead air. So, just a couple of facts that I don't think people get. Since 2013, so people say, things are better, Mel. I don't know why you're so riled up about this topic. First, I'm not riled up. I'm just very, very intentional these days about it. But since 2013, the wealth gap between black and white has gotten worse. And it's a
That's
testament
correct.
to when you're ahead and building wealth, the accelerating factors create a momentum on your wealth that is hard for those who did not have it to ever catch up. So that fact to me is mind-boggling. And then when you throw on top of that almost 50% of black households are more likely to inherit poverty than they are to inherit any wealth, meaning they are more likely to be in multi-generations of poverty than any other group. And whites are 9%. So half of American families are inheriting poverty.
Absolutely.
9% of white families. How can I say that in the United States of America in 2021 that fact is still true? We've got a systemic problem here.
That's correct.
That we got to go work on.
And see, that's what I was saying earlier when I gave you the example of my grandmother with my aunt in terms of being able to pass down land and property.
Yes.
Right. And see, that's where the issues have come in, and because of that systemic problem that was created 2 or 3 or 4, however young, we always say 400 years of slavery. I'm got to be a little bit more than that now. But 400 or 500 years ago, that systemic system, not to be double with the words, but was put in place. And because of that, that's why that gap keeps getting wider and wider. I said wider, WIDER, not WHITER. So it gets wider. Yeah. And the author I was trying to say.
Maybe both.
Yeah. That's absolutely right.
But it keeps happening. So when you go to any community and you look at where the highway went through, right? It went through a black neighborhood.
Right.
And so let's imagine back then that we owned our homes, and we were on our path to building our wealth through our homes, which is where 67% of all the wealth is in the home for most people in America, not just black people. But our homes are taken. And so we lose our equity position in our homes. We move to a different neighborhood. We either get less house or we're renting. And so we disrupted that flow. in an effort to build suburbs that at that time we couldn't move into. But today, when you build a new stadium or you build a, you want to come into a neighborhood and give it economic investment, again, we are removed from our ownership places there, or maybe the tax base rises so high that now we can't pay the property taxes in a place we've been in forever, and we lose our homes through that, and we break that cycle again of ability to build wealth. And so people think this is all historic. It is historic and still happening.
Correct.
In systems that I would say are disproportionately disadvantaging Black people, which make them, in my mind.
No, I could not agree with you more. You're absolutely right. And the author I was trying to cite a couple of minutes ago, because Jawanza Kunjufu, certainly, no question, folks need to read him. But the author I was trying to cite was Naeem Akbar. Naeem, in his book, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery, is either that one or, because I read three of them right there together. There's Know Thyself, New Visions for Black Men, The Community of Self, and Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. And one of those, and I think it was the Psychological Slavery book, he talks about what I was saying earlier about our white brothers and sisters are surrounded by greatness everywhere they look. And it is our objective that we need to, in other words, we should not be ashamed. We should not be ashamed of promoting us. Because a lot of times we as African Americans, we don't want to celebrate our accomplishments. We need to celebrate our accomplishments just as much as theirs. Now, as you just said, historically and currently, these things are, systemic and by design. And we need to understand that. And from the standpoint of the African American side, we need to understand that and not play into the trap in the game. That's where I think the conversation on our side needs to come. Like some of this stuff we bring on ourselves. Now, I cut both ways in terms of I call a spade, no pun intended. I cut both ways. It is what it is. We contribute ourselves to this gap widening too. So that conversation that you're talking about, yes, we need to have that conversation. Our Caucasian brothers and sisters need to, and we need to kind of come together and say, okay, how can we make this thing work for everybody? And that's really what kind of needed. But we got to stop. And I had this conversation because I'm not, like you were talking about, your friend said, oh, you were a little bit too soft. Well, when I make the statement of I'm not a big fan of reparations, folks look at me cross-eyed. It's like, well, no, I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of like me or my grandnephew, somebody just getting a check just because I'm Black.
Yeah. Well, you should read. There's a chapter in the book about. The chapter's called "It's Time to Pay It Back," because I'm with you, man. I am against reparations. At least I was until I really went through this process, and I hope I put together a cogent argument that when you read it, that you'll say, at least I got to think about it.
Well, I'll tell you where I'm at with it. Well, I'll tell you my thinking in terms of when I say reparations. I mean, I don't see the government just handing Black folks a check. I do see, however, provisions being made in terms of businesses and land and that kind of thing. That I can see. And again, once that happens, I don't think
it's going to work, Mark.
What's that?
I don't think it's going to work. I don't think that'll work. We talked about it earlier. Our gap in wealth is so obscene that I don't know how you close it.
Wow.
Unless I just don't. I mean, and again, I was never a fan of it. I didn't even want to have, what are you talking about reparations? You guys have lost your mind. But until I really studied it now this area I do understand. I do understand wealth creation and business growth, and I understand those things. And I can't get us to equity in my own solutions without reparations. And again, how we do it, should it be done? I think the debate is one we should have. Put all the smart people in the room to figure it out. I'm not telling you that I'm right. What I'm telling you is I don't have another solution.
Well, I'll tell you this way. Okay, then this is why what I'm saying is what I'm saying. And Dave Chappelle, again, back in the 90s, did a wonderful it's a comical skit, but it's real. And it's going back to what I was saying a couple of minutes ago in terms of us now having to be responsible. Because it is no need for us to wind up getting a check and then we turn right back around and give it, and this is in the Chappelle skit, give it to the liquor store, Kentucky Fried Chicken, the Cadillac place, or now I guess it would be Lexus and Infiniti or whoever, or Maserati or whoever. It would be no sense for us getting a check and then turning right around and giving it back into our Caucasian businesses. Like their stocks go up and whatnot, and we still don't have anything. So it would definitely take I'm not saying we're stupid, because we're not, but it would definitely take a different mindset with the wealth, that we can't be running out here just because we got some money buying Jordans. It has to be invested in something that's going to continue building wealth.
Man, we should have started with this topic. I can talk about this one now forever, because I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. And then I totally disagree with you. And I don't know if I can do both at the same time, but I'm gonna try. Because for me, I picture a single mom with 2 kids, that if I gave her $160,000, make the number up, and forget how I gave it to her, and I could see her moving her kids from the neighborhood she's in, and they're experiencing the schools they're experiencing, to move to my white friend's neighborhood to experience their public schools. Their kids now have a different network, a different opportunity in college that turns into a different career path. And she, in a single generation, breaks the chains of poverty forever for her family. That's the part I see. Now, is a brother out there buying too many shoes and liquor and clothes and cars? Maybe. But what about that sister that just changed the trajectory of the next generation in her family, her 2 kids, their kids, and so forth? And again, how do I get her to that place? I don't know of another way. So I hear you, and I think it'll be a hot mess. I really do think it'll be a hot mess. Nike will love it, and the greatest bourbons and liquor will love it. But I think that house she buys and the chain she breaks might be worth it.
I am with you, provided that happens. That's what I'm saying. If there was some kind of way, that's what I was talking about when I say land, houses, or whatever. If it was some kind of way the government said, okay, look, here, pick whatever house you want, we'll pay for it. Something along those lines. Or if they give a cap, so the house is $200,000. That's your cap. You go find a house you want, no mortgage. Yeah. And even with that, they would now have to come in there and take care of it. They couldn't go in there and now I got a free house that I don't keep up with it. I don't mow the lawn. I don't keep it painted. I don't do the maintenance. That's what I'm saying. It's a mindset shift. I mean, and that's my only concern with reparations, that if I get a check just because I'm black and I'm irresponsible, then the next generation is not going to be impacted. But now with the scenario that you just gave, I'm with you.
Yeah, and what I don't know is, and this is where I go back and forth in my mind, and I want to spend more time in this myself, is why can't we trust our black people? Because I want to lean toward trusting them. We probably need to put some education, because we've not been educated in economics and budgeting, and we've done too little of that. We've had some, but far too little. And I'm not talking about all black people here. I'm just saying, as a people, we don't sit around the dinner table and talk about investments and ways to borrow and not to borrow, and so we got some bad habits around that. But if we can put the right things in place, so see how we just came back to darn near agreeing on this thing. If we can put the right things in place so that the money goes to something that has a high likelihood of changing their lives.
Correct.
Yeah, then it sounds like you and I would agree.
No, we would. I mean, that's why I started with saying I'm just not for a check being given just because I'm black. I'm just not, but the scenarios that we just talked about, I'd be all for that. And to answer your question about why can't black people trust black people, Akbar talks about that in that book, Breaking the Chains of Psychological Slavery. He does a whole chapter on that. And I wish I had my copy here in front of me so I could read some excerpts from it, but I don't have that with me. But in that book, he talks about that very thing. And one of the reasons, again, is going back historically, of course, back to the house. Well, I won't say it on the air, but right. It was like that system they put in place to make us fight each other in terms of the ones who were in the house versus the one that was in the field. I'll put it that way. I'll be nice. I'll be politically correct. But even that division, and has carried over, even within this whole notion of light skin versus dark skin, good hair versus bad hair, yada, 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 yada. All of that's in there.
And I'm gonna go back and grab that book again, because it's been years since I read it. I have to pull it back out. I totally agree with you that our trauma along the way,
correct,
it has institutionalized amongst our people this: we can't trust. It's difficult for us to work together. There's this judgment of those who have attained some education and wealth against some who have not. And so we've just taken this construct of slavery and updated it to 2021. And we are now empowered to break those chains for sure. And so there's probably going to be another book, Dear Black Friends, because I
hear you.
I can't
You're
ask
right.
my white friends
to
respond to the call and then look at my black friends and say, well, what's up with y'all? You know? So we got to have another conversation. Here's my dilemma. Maybe you can help me because I looked at the list of authors you had, and my goodness, I hope my name gets up on the wall at some point.
All right,
I don't know if you update that or not. Okay. That's what I need. I need my name up there. You got some noted authors. But, you know, when we look at this conversation we need to have with ourselves, my fear is it get used in a way that confirms the narrative in the world today. You follow what I'm saying?
I do.
Some of the discussion we just had about how we consume and how we treat each other, blah, blah, blah. If we're writing about that, are white people going to take that and use it in a way that says, see, I told you, let them go get their stuff together and then call us afterwards.
I understand, but, you know, not for nothing. First off, they put us in the predicament. Secondly, in terms of always the ones trying to reach out, even in this case that we're talking about, the ones who are always trying to reach out to help folks understand has always been on the African-American side. It has always been us who've been trying to have this conversation. At some point, they are going to have to meet us somewhere in the middle and conversate with us, or it's going to have to come from their side. Like when it starts coming from the Caucasian side that this thing have to be fixed, it's going to be fixed. So I hear what you're saying, and at the same time, yeah, we do need to get our act together because not for nothing. I mean, we hear about crime and shooting and killing. And you know, we go crazy when a white person kills a black person, but we need to address the black on black killing as well. We need to stop killing ourselves also. So we do. I mean, each group needs to. It's not one group that needs to get the act together and the other doesn't. Both groups need to get their act together.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there's got to be a way to have that conversation with black people that doesn't get you ostracized, doesn't get that you can write in a way that it's not a tool for those who would want to use it for harm, and you don't become that voice of the right wing black person who is really dogging our people because you know, I love black people, but I wake up every day, Mark, and I don't know what your life is like. You're a principal. I wake up every day, and once I leave my house, man, it's white. It's white. Until I come back home and kiss my wife, it's white. And it's been that way since I've been in middle school. So I have been indoctrinated in how to be with white people. Not ashamed of that. It doesn't, I'm not apologizing for it. But because of it, let's go back to why I wrote this book. Because of it, and because of I've had some business success, and because I've got influence with my white friends, that platform is why I got called to write this book. I got convicted to write this book and take this risk and put this out into the world because ever since I was in middle school, I've been with these folks. And now they trust me and we're friends. And I hope that all of that means they're going to read this and help themselves come to realize something.
And see, and that's the way it ought to be. And in terms of, for those of you who are listening, I hope you've been with me since 6, but certainly if you hadn't been since 6, I definitely hope you've been with me since 7, because we're talking about the book, Dear White Friend, The Realities of Race, the Power of Relationships, and Our Path to Equity. And my guest this morning is the author of that book, and it was just released earlier this week, Melvin J. Gravely II. All right. And we're talking about here, of course, the topic of race relations. Now, this is the thing. I know exactly what you're talking about in terms of once I entered the work world. I shared with you that I was at AT&T, and most of my career, if not all of my 15 years there, I was usually the only black person in the group. Usually. I was the only black person in the group. And the one time that I did get a group that was all African American, we far outseated the other groups. That was the one year I got like the extra bonus, and they broke that group up immediately. That group was...
We don't need to have that.
No, that group was disbanded immediately. The district manager was black, the B lines and the A lines. All of us were African American. We outperformed the other groups. And that group, after we got our bonus that year, they disbanded it. So I understand exactly what you're talking about. But my thing is this, because since I was in high school, I have been trying, and I've gotten closer now to speak Spanish fluently. And where I'm going with this is, I just think being multilingual or bilingual is such a skill, such an asset. So my thing is, why not being able to operate regardless of if you're in the Caucasian world, the black world, the Spanish world? That to me would be an asset. Okay, when I'm with my brothers, if I need to go in there, yo man, what's up? What'd it be like? If I need to talk Ebonics with them to communicate, fine. If I need to, when I'm in my Caucasian world, speak quote unquote the King's English, then so be it. I can do that too. Yeah. I mean, so that to me is an asset. That's not a negative. That's an asset. That's a positive. That whenever I'm in corporate, because I would do a lot of presentations to the CEOs, to the presidents, and folks would come, oh, you're so articulate. Are you not expecting me to be articulate? No, you're not. You're not. Oh, you're not like them. Yes, I am like them.
Oh, I love the one where they say, Mel, I don't see you as black.
Correct.
And I know what they mean.
Right.
And now I respond with a pretty quick quip. As dark as I am, you don't see me as black. I mean, how can you not, right? And it makes them pause, and you say, you know what I mean? I say, yeah, I do know what you mean, and I need you to think about what you mean by what you just said, right? You don't assign all the things you think about black people to me, which is very different than, not seeing me as black. And that even that very thought, though, the very thought that you and I get referred to that way in corporate America and other places tells you that at the very root, what they think of black people.
Oh, absolutely. I told you I did that diversity course. One of the exercises, and listening audience, I apologize if you heard it in the last time I had race relation conversation. But one of the exercises we would do, Mel, is we would take the big sticky notes, the big Post-it notes, the giant ones, and we would post them around the conference room. And then we would give them the little tiny sticky notes, the little yellow ones or green ones or whatever. And we would say, this was the exercise. And then we had all different groups. So we had Spanish, we had Jews, we had blacks, we had black women, we had white women, we had jocks, we had Asians, you name the category, we had a big Post-it for it. And we would tell them, now look, this is not something you have to say that you believe. However, if this is something that you've heard on television or you've read it or you've talked about it and whatever, put down the stereotypes that you have heard about these various groups. When I tell you, as I traveled around the country, I might as well have taken the little sticky notes myself and placed them up, because no matter where I went in the country, the views were the same. For each particular category, the view would be the same. And at that time, during that time, that movie White Men Can't Jump was out.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, under white man, somebody would put can't jump.
Well, it is true, and the media plays us into that, and movies play us into that. One of the things I call people to do in the book is become more culturally fluent.
Yes.
Right? Because you and I have had to become at least black-white culturally fluent.
Yes.
We have to be able to go back and forth if we're going to have success. I'm inviting my white friends to be more culturally fluent, read some different books, watch some different movies. One of my favorites to tell them to watch is Love Jones.
Right.
It's just a movie with a bunch of black people in it. They're none of them on drugs, none of them are downtrodden. They're just a young set of professional black people, and it's a love story. I don't think my white friends have ever seen a movie like that. Many of them have not, and so I'm inviting them to just get more comfortable and aware about who they are. And I ask the question, how many times do they walk in a room when they're the only one?
Right.
When they're not the sage on the stage, right? You can't be telling me about the times when you came and you talked to all your people in the call center and all your call center people were black.
Correct.
No. You were still the sage on the stage. I'm talking about when you walked into the restaurant with your wife and kids and the restaurant's all black and you sat there and had dinner. Tell me about that time. Or tell me about the time when, you were on, in a corporate meeting and everybody was black except for you. And in the times they give me were all times they could extract themselves from the situation and go back to their comfort place. So these are the things I invite them to keep considering that I just don't know if they've done in their past. And in relationship with people, when they're your friend, they listen to you more. And I think we can get to those conversations.
Absolutely. I tell you what, I'm looking at the blurb that's on your website about the book. I'm getting ready to read that. The title of the book, again, listening audience, is Dear White Friend. It says, get your copy of Dear White Friend, and this is the blurb on the website. Melvin Gravely eloquently accomplishes what many have undoubtedly wished to do, talk openly to someone we know about race in the United States today. Gravely uses significant experience as a business and civic leader to express a rare balance in this timely message. Dear White Friend is a forthright collegial conversation via chapters in the form of letters, each with a combination of personal reflection and meaningful hard facts. Gravely challenges the reader, but without judgment or indictment. His depth of thought, deftness of expression, and clear layman's terms make for an urgent call to begin to close the gap between races in America. The book presents an invitation to understand three questions at the heart of the issue. What is really going on with race in our country? Why must we care? And what can we do about it together? See, that's the key word there, together. In the end, Gravely calls on us to ask ourselves, quote, what is my role in all of this, unquote. After reading Dear White Friend, readers will understand why their answer to his question can change everything. Now, the key to this whole thing is both sides have to have willing participants and cooperation. Each side has to be willing to cooperate. And as Mel just said, you know.
Yeah, the publishers really, when you read that, I'm like, that's pretty good.
You know, it's interesting. It's one thing to read it, and it's another thing to hear somebody else reading it.
Yeah, that's the first time I've heard anybody read that. That's pretty good, Mark. I'm going to take you're going to be my hype machine now. I love that, man. You know, I'm still a little bit nervous that my white friends will struggle,
right,
and struggle to still have me in community and to have me and to invite me into those places of influence, because they still have the power to exclude me if they decide to.
Correct.
But I tell you, man, this is the convicted part. When I became convicted, I remember the day I decided it had to become a book. It was when Ahmaud Arbery was chased down by the white man in the white pickup truck.
Correct.
And if you remember the brother, I think it was in Georgia, it wasn't George Floyd that got me, and as horrible as that killing was.
Right.
It was the picture in my mind of white people jumping in the back of a pickup truck.
Correct.
And chasing a dude down the street and him being killed. And I thought, at this time, it's 2020. How can that be happening? And at that moment, I just felt convicted to say, you know, these letters you've been writing, brother, you got to get serious about these, and you got to be brave enough to call your friends out on this topic. And man, that's when it became a book in my mind, at least. And I committed to making sure it came out. And again, it's so new in the marketplace that I don't know what the response will be. I will tell you that it's selling well. We made Amazon bestseller even before the book was released.
All right.
And so it's getting some traction. But, oh, man, I'm still nervous that I could be, they talk about cancel culture, I could be canceled. So I'm going to have to come to New Jersey.
Well, there's a couple of things. One, and it says it here in the description, you're not necessarily judging or indicting. We're just trying to open conversation. And it's interesting that you brought up the Ahmaud Arbery thing, because I told you I just came back from North Carolina visiting my aunt and Georgia visiting my mother. My mother lives in what used to at one point historically be the capital of Georgia, Louisville, Georgia. Louisville is a tiny squeedunk podunk town. I did not even know until one day we were downtown. They had a plaque on there saying, you know, first capital of the state of Georgia. I'm like, what? Louisville? Really? Seriously? But in any event,
I don't want you to lose your train of thought. My mother was born in Louisville, Georgia.
Get out of here. Well, that's where my mom lives. And so not this trip, but a couple of trips, the trip before this one, there's of course the paved road, and then there's like the red dirt clay road. I took a walk down that red dirt clay road, and it was surrounded by long, as they call Georgia pines. And I walked down that road for a good mile or so and turned around and came back. And when I came back in the house, I said, Mom, there's no doubt in my mind lynchings occurred in some of these trees. I could feel it in my spirit. I could feel as I took that walk that some of our ancestors had been lynched and hung on some of those very trees that I had just walked through. I could feel it. I mean, I was not making it up. It wasn't exaggerated. But so back to your point with Ahmaud, I'm feeling something that was going on 500-600 years ago, and maybe even not even that long, maybe 100 years ago, back in 1920, 1930, 1950 or whatever. But you're saying this was 2020 and yet we're still seeing it.
Yeah, and because it looked like a lynching to me.
It looked like that to me too. I saw that as the same thing, because that's what it looked like to me too.
I mean, these guys jumped in that truck. I mean, so that video, it just messed me up, man. It just messed me up in a way that I thought, Mel, you can't be on the sideline on this anymore. You have relationships. You have a platform. You're a writer. This is your moment, and it's going to cost me something. I don't know what it is, but I couldn't get that vision out of my mind. I still can't, and that can't be okay in the country we live in. It just can no longer be okay.
Well, interestingly enough, even as you were just describing it, that video came back in my mind, and I saw it just as if I was watching a movie as well. Just you talking about it. I mean, I could see that boy running down because he went on jogging. Because see, that was the thing. That could be me or you on any given day. Now, all he was doing was jogging. I have walked the roads in Georgia and North Carolina before, and Virginia and what have you. So on any given day, that could be either of us for the sole reason of our skin color, for no other reason.
Well, and Mark, here's the part that really bothered me is the narrative. First of all, it took so long for us to find out about this. That bothered me. And then the narrative that started to play out about him, who he was, what he was about, like we were beginning to justify why it might be okay what just happened. I don't care what that dude was doing. I don't care if he was jogging. I don't care if he went to the house with the intent of stealing copper pipe. I don't care what he was doing. No one has the right to be the jury and the executioner of anyone. You know, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We all have some inalienable rights. At least we're supposed to. But I write about it in the book. There's two different contracts with America.
Absolutely.
You and our rights are not inalienable often.
That's correct.
Whether it's Trayvon Martin because he had weed in his system and because he was truant from school, does that equal he should be? It's okay to kill him. You know, so and that man never did any time.
None. Talking about George. None.
And so my point is that when my white friends say things are equal now, I say, how can that be equal? How can we now justify that Trayvon should be killed because the young man was truant from school and had a history of truancy? I'm not defending that young man. He shouldn't be truant from school. He should have been smoking weed. Maybe he shouldn't have had on a hoodie, and maybe he shouldn't have been eating Skittles. But I do know for sure none of that equals he should have been killed. And that's the kind of conversation that when we break it down, because again, my white friends are in their silo. And they hear these narratives, and they don't realize themselves even that narrative has been played out so many times that it becomes true to them. I need them to pause and say, whoa, what was he doing? And so we can only do that in relationships.
That's correct.
If not, they're in their place, I'm in mine, and we're not talking about this topic.
If
we have to,
because we're coming down to the close of the interview, but I don't know if you've ever had an opportunity to see it. Dr. Dre did. Actually, it was an advertisement for Beats for the headphones, but. It is. I had to do a double take because they actually played it on regular TV. It was during the football season. It was one of the ads that came on in a football game. But the title of it, if you haven't seen it, go to YouTube. It's called "Do You Love Me," and it's Dr. Dre. And what Dre is getting at is you love our style. You love, you copy everything that we do. But do you love me as a person? So if you haven't had a chance to see it, I encourage you,
I'm gonna look
please
that up,
go
man.
to YouTube. It's Dr. Dre. It's a Beats commercial, but it's called Do You Love Me? It's deep. I love it. I mean, and I was not necessarily a Dr. Dre fan, but I can honestly say that commercial, he hit it on point.
Well done. Huh?
It was extremely well done. As a matter of fact, whenever you get a chance to see it, email me. when you get a chance, either LinkedIn or email. I think you have my email. I'm not sure. I know you have my LinkedIn, but I'll give you my email. It's very easy, professormedley@gmail.com. Once you've seen it, email me. But it's deep. It really is. It's Do You Love Me? And it's Dr. Dre. The ad is for the headphones Beats. All right. I tell you what, we're down to now the book, and I'm giving you a chance to promote in a couple of minutes. Is it in Kindle version?
Yes, it is.
Oh, well, then when I leave here before noon, I will have downloaded it on my iPad.
Terrific.
So what I would, at this point, I'm going to shut the microphone off and I'm going to allow you to promote in terms of websites, in terms of speaking engagements, book signs, anything. The only thing you cannot say, Mel, is the cost. You cannot say a dollar amount, but anything short of that, you want to shout out your wife, you want to shout out the company, the publicist, or anybody, whatever you want to do for the next couple minutes, I'm turning my mic off, is yours, with the exception of a dollar amount.
Well, Mark, I'm not much of a hype guy, but I will tell you folks, if you go to dearwhitefriend.com, dearwhitefriend.com, you'll find more about the book. You'll also find booksellers that are selling the book, including African-American booksellers. But it really should be available anywhere fine books are sold. I will give a shout-out to Greenleaf Publishing because they did do an awesome job, and my editor, Barbara McNichol, did a great job, and the research assistant, Marcus Smith. But I really want to give a shout-out to the Reading Circle because these dialogues are important. And I looked at the list of writers and authors that have been in the Reading Circle, and I'm excited to be amongst them. And I look forward to the next time. So I'm not much of a hype guy, but let's go make a difference in the world because I think we've got an opportunity to do that. Dear White Friend, it's just my offering to that conversation. So thanks again, Mark.
You are more than thank you for rising early with me. And I do update that list from time to because that's just the short list. Like I said, this is my 20th year on the air with this. I have met so many people, Mel, over the 20 years. And I was saying this earlier.
Yeah.
The bulk of them I have not met in person unless it's a local author. If it's somebody local in my area, they come live into the studio. But most is just like what we're doing here is on telephone. But it has created some wonderful network and some wonderful relationships that we still email each other or see each other on LinkedIn or one of the other social media sites. We stay in touch with each other. So that's, again, you've now, just from our conversation, already become a fast friend.
Well, I appreciate that, man. You are great at this. Your energy in this and your commitment to it is great.
Thank you so much. I thank God for it. I love it. I always tell people if I had the opportunity, because for me, I hate to diminish it to say it's a hobby because it's not, because I always tell folks, even though we're in it's a college station, it's commercial free, it's a non-commercial, whatever, I still look for the professionalism to be the same. Like folks they would not be able to tell that they were listening to a commercial station versus a non-commercial station, whether it was a university station versus one of the stations that's whatever stations in your area, because we're heard all around the world. That GoBrave.org goes anywhere in the world. I have folks listening in the West, folks Central America. I mean, in the center of the country, South, definitely. I have folks in that North Carolina, South Carolina area listening. Folks here in New Jersey area, and folks all around the world now, because it's heard on the old-fashioned FM radio, 88.7 FM, and it's heard on GoBrave.org around the world, and it's on TuneIn Radio, and I archive them, so folks can actually go to my YouTube site and catch interviews from years ago. All right. So I am grateful and thankful for it. And it really is. And I if I could now, or one day if it does happen where I can make at least the same salary I'm making as a principal doing radio, as much as I love education, I would do radio full time, and I'd still do something educational based, because there's no question our folks need to be educated. But if I could do radio full time and get paid the same money I'm making, as a school administrator, I would leave it.
Well, I tell you, you've got a gift, and you just never know. Of all the places you said things are listened to, it only takes one person's heart, mind, and spirit to be changed by what you're doing. That can change everything for somebody, man. And you just, every time you get in front of the mic, you got that opportunity, and I just I honor you for it. So thank you for your contribution.
Well, thank you so much. And again, like I said, before noon, I will have Dear White Friend downloaded on my Kindle. For those of you in the listening audience, it is on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Black Pearl Books, Books A Million, Books and Crannies, Bookshop. That's the ones that are listed. But I'm sure if you go to any, because nowadays all you got to do is go into the store and tell them the title and the author, and they'll order it for you. So no question. I'm looking forward to reading it because I am a proponent of that. Like I said, I don't place everything on our Caucasian brothers and sisters. But at the same time, it is going to take us coming together and working this thing out together. It's not going to take one group, whether bottom up. Matter of fact, bottom up probably is not going to, it's going to, like I said earlier, it's going to take the mass of them to say, we're going to fix this, and it will be fixed.
Yes, time.
It is time. It really is.
Acknowledge it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And the only way that's going to happen is, like you just said, reading books like yours, having conversations that the light bulb go on and say, you know what, they have a point here. I didn't realize we were doing this. I didn't realize that when I do this, they feel that way. I didn't realize that whenever now it's been brought to my attention, I'm going to start making some conscious changes. That's the only way it's going to happen.
Yep. I agree, man. And I expect my white friends, now that you know better, I just ask you to do better, and I'll be here with you to do that, and that's got to be our commitment. So
absolutely,
totally agree. So you make sure you email me and tell me what you think after you get a chance to take a read.
I will, and again, like I said, my email is very simple. It's professormedley@gmail. So whenever you,
I wrote it down. I'm gonna look up the video.
When you look up that video on YouTube with Dr. Dre,
I will.
And just kind of like my mouth dropped open. First off, the fact that it was like a 2-minute commercial in a football game, and the subject matter. And it was in your face. It was not like they didn't sugarcoat it. They didn't edit it. They didn't cut it. They ran it as is. And the message was received.
I can't wait. I can't wait to look at it.
So, all right, man, you have a wonderfully blessed day, week. Thank you. And best to you. All right. We'll be in touch. Take care.